So, I haven't been making a lot of videos lately, but I have been seeing a lot of movies in the last month, and I keep forgetting to do reviews. I keep going back and forth saying, oh, I'm going to do this today, I'm going to do this today, and then I'm like, oh, I'm too tired, I'm going to do it tomorrow, and then tomorrow comes and I'm like, I don't want to do it today, I'll do it tomorrow, so on and so forth. So I decided that I looked at some of the movies that I saw in the past month, and I'm like, okay, maybe I should kind of touch on these a little bit, maybe I should talk about them a little bit, and give my thoughts out there so I can at least kind of not necessarily a quote from my Snow White review, but kind of be a part of the conversation in some way. So these were some movies that I saw within the last month that maybe I didn't have too many thoughts on, but I decided I kind of just at least want to get something out there saying, hey, yes, I did see this movie. This is what I want to talk about with this movie, and so on and so forth. So let's just dive in. The first movie was The Electric State, which stars Chris Pratt, Millie Bobby Brown, Kiwi Kwan, a few voices, and also was directed by Anthony and Joe Russo, who did the Avengers movies, particularly Avengers Endgame and Infinity War. And this movie taking place in an alternate reality, robots were taken over, and this woman discovers that her brother, who she thought was dead, is may possibly be alive and such, and basically she works with the robots to kind of change course of history and such. And this is a movie that it's bad. It's really bad. I can't really it's so bland, it's so forgettable. A lot of the dialogue is just ripped from literally every movie out there. Tell me if you've heard this before. I'm not going to do this. Next scene cuts to him doing exactly what he said he wasn't going to do. This movie cost like over $200 million, and you couldn't get a better script. The performances themselves are mostly okay. Like there's no bad performance, but they're so thinly written. Millie Bobby Brown, her character is just very boring. Chris Pratt is not very interesting. Kiwi Kwan is very wasted in this movie. Even the voice actors don't really have a lot of character. The robots look okay-ish, but they don't really utilize them that much until like the last 20 minutes or so. Most of the other actors, I'm like, what are you doing in this movie? What are you doing? And look, thinking about like all the movies that Anthony and Joe Russo have done since Endgame, I'm like, huh, it's like you guys really struck lightning in a bottle with Infinity War and Endgame, and I hope Doomsday is not doomed because you guys can't direct anymore. But like Cherry was very disappointing. The Gray Man was also very disappointing, and I kind of figured this one was going to be bad, but this one is just dull. It's just not interesting. The plot is just uninteresting. It's not fun. It's not interesting. And I keep saying it's not interesting, but you know what? I don't care. This movie's not very good. I'll give The Electric State 1 out of 4 stars. Skip it. Next up is Black Bag, which was directed by Steven Soderbergh and it stars Michael Fassbender as a spy who learns that there's a conspiracy going on and there are potential suspects in his agency, particularly his wife, played by Kate Blanchett. Also stars Naomi Harris, Regé-Jean Page, Pierce Brosnan's in this movie randomly. And I will say this movie is very slick. I will say it's very interesting for about the first two thirds, but then kind of just gets really confusing by the third act. But the four performances are really good. Michael Fassbender, always consistent. Kate Blanchett, always consistent. Marissa Abela, who I remember seeing in Back to Black, thinking she was all right in that movie. She's pretty good as one of the side characters in this movie. I also kind of like seeing the different angle, like the different approach to this movie than you would normally see a spy thriller. But then again, Steven Soderbergh kind of brings more grounded movies these days. Like, Contagion was not as action packed as people were expecting it, and this movie is definitely not as action packed as something like, say, Mission Impossible. So this was a movie. It's like, okay, when I saw it from that angle, I'm like, okay, I kind of get it. The score is also very good, kind of a techno theme and such. I do really like that. It is definitely keeping you on your toes, but also it's kind of like, where's this going? And by the end, it's like, okay, fine, whatever. I don't care anymore. I do like some of the dialogue scenes. Like there's one at a dinner party that goes on for like 10 minutes. I'm like, okay, this is actually very well done and such. Also, it is kind of interesting to see, spies in a therapy session, which is like kind of funny to see. But overall, I definitely feel like if you're looking for something like Mission Impossible, you're definitely not going to get it with this movie. But I can definitely see the appeal of this movie. It's definitely very different than a lot of spy movies out there. I'll give it 2.5 out of 4 stars. Stream it. Next up is the Day the Earth Blew Up, the Looney Tunes movie. This is a movie that I've been hearing a lot about, and a lot of people seem to be really excited for this movie. And I remember seeing it, and I'm thinking, it's fine. It's okay. It's not amazing by any means, but it has its moments. There are definitely some funny jokes here and there. Although I would argue that most of the funny jokes were in the trailer. Daffy Duck, Porky Pig, they're great in this movie, but no one really stood out in this movie. There weren't a lot of jokes in this movie that stood out other than the ones I remember from the trailers. I do love the 2D animation in this movie, and I'm really upset that this movie didn't do as well because it means we probably aren't going to get a lot of 2D animated movies for a long time. Although Coyote vs. Acme was just purchased by Ketchup Entertainment, so we'll hopefully see that very soon. This movie was just okay. Like, I wasn't as blown away by it like a lot of people were. It has its moments. The animation's great, but it's okay. It's fine. I'll give it 2.5 out of 4 stars. Stream it. Next up is The Alto Knights, which was directed by Barry Levinson, who directed Rain Man, and also stars Robert De Niro in 2 roles about a man who was the leader of a mob of the mob, and also the man who took him out. This was a movie that I was very interested in because whenever Robert De Niro does a gangster movie, it's always going to be very fascinating in some way, whether that's Goodfellas, Casino, The Irishman, so on and so forth. This movie is kind of like The Irishman in a way, except it's only half as long and only half as emotionally investing. This movie has its moments, like particularly a couple of performances. I was surprised by Deborah Messing in this movie. She was actually really good in this movie. Cosmo Jarvis is also really good. I believe that was him who was the guy who was paid to take Robert De Niro's character out at one point. Robert De Niro in this movie, he's not particularly great. Like, there are times where it's like, okay, your performance is fine, and then there's some where it's like, oh, it's pretty bad. And it feels less like a movie that was, you know, it feels less like a monster movie along the lines of Goodfellas or Casino or The Irishman, and kind of feels like a movie that was kind of ripped off from those movies, particularly The Irishman, because it does have Robert De Niro kind of just talking to someone throughout the entire movie. And it's just like, did he just redo The Irishman? Because like it's just not as fascinating as it was in The Irishman. But overall, I just felt like it was a carbon copy of a gangster movie rather than something that was actually something that could influence a lot of movies going forward. I'll give The Alto Knights 2 out of 4 stars. Stream it. Next up was Ash, directed by Flying Lotus. It stars Isaac Gonzalez and Aaron Paul. And it's about a woman who wakes up on a spacecraft. She's the only survivor, and she tries to figure out what happened, what's going on now, and things get complicated when someone from her past shows up. This movie, I remember seeing, like, I saw it was going to be playing at a theater near me, and I'm like, okay, I'll check this movie out. Sounds kind of cool. And I was definitely blown away by the production values of this movie. I was definitely blown away by the intensity of this movie. It definitely it gets under your skin very quickly. Isaac Gonzalez is pretty good in the movie. Aaron Paul is also really good in the movie. The score is also very good in this movie. Flying Lotus, he's more into music than he is into filmmaking, and it definitely shows that at times. I would say the sets of this movie don't look particularly great. Now, when they go outside at various points, it definitely looks like it's on a soundstage. And I'm like, okay, that looks pretty cheap. And then there are moments in this movie too where it kind of reminded me of Alien. Now, any sci-fi movie is going to take influence from Alien. It's just going to happen no matter what. I definitely felt like there were times where it's like, okay, that was kind of ripped from Alien a bit. But I still found it interesting enough, still found it intense enough that I would definitely kind of recommend watching this movie at some point. I'll give Ash 3 out of 4 stars. See it. Next up was Locked, directed by David Yarovsky, who previously directed the movie Brightburn, a movie that I was not a big fan of, so I was not looking forward to this movie. It stars Bill Skarsgård and Anthony Hopkins. Bill Skarsgård is a man who kind of just does horrible things in his life. He steals from people. And then one day he sees this very luxurious car. He decides to break into it to try to steal it. But the owner of the car, played by Anthony Hopkins, decides, yeah, I'm going to lock you in this car and teach you a lesson. So this was a movie, yeah, again, I was not looking forward to, mainly because of the director, and I was surprised when we were also getting it at a theater near me. This movie actually really surprised me. I had a really good time with this movie. Bill Skarsgård is really good in this movie. Anthony Hopkins, too, is also really good in this movie, despite the fact that you don't really see him. It's more just his voice. But even when he's just talking, he's just having a blast in this movie. He is so creepy, but it's like kind of an uncomfortable moment. Kind of very uncomfortable at times where you're like laughing a lot of the things he's saying. There's one moment where he's talking about the Kardashians, and it's just kind of funny to me. Never would expect that, honestly. But there are a lot of really interesting ideas in this movie. Like, Bill Skarsgård's character clearly is doing awful things prior to what happens in this movie. But, and his arc is very interesting. But at the same time, Anthony Hopkins is like, hey, I'm doing this really awful thing, but do you understand where I'm coming from? It does have that back and forth, which is very fascinating, and it is admittedly pretty fun and funny at times. I would definitely recommend this movie at some point. I'll give Locked 3 out of 4 stars. See it. Next up is The Woman in the Yard, directed by Jean-Colette Serra. It stars Danielle Deadwyler as a single mother who her family is dealing with a tragedy, but then a woman appears in their yard and says, "Today's the day." What does that mean exactly? Well, see the movie to find out. This was a movie that I remember seeing the first trailer for and thinking that was really creepy because the fact that this woman only says, today's the day, that was creepy enough to me. Plus, I really liked Danielle Deadwyler. She was fantastic until to the point where I'm like, she was robbed of an Oscar nomination. That is a grave injustice, in my opinion. And I was really excited to see what this movie is going to be like, even though I kind of put the pieces together before I saw the movie, which I won't spoil if you haven't seen that trailer already. But this was a movie that it's so weird because, like, I liked the first act. The second act, I had mixed feelings about. And the third act, I did not care for. The first act has a lot of intensity. It's very nerve-wracking. It's like you're kind of wondering, like, what's going to happen, what's going to happen. The performances themselves are pretty good, particularly from Danielle Deadwyler. The second act is where it's like I have a few more questions where I'm like, wait, what? What just happened? I won't spoil anything, but there's a scene where one of the characters interacts with the woman in the yard, and then all of a sudden they come back into the house. It's like, huh? What? Okay. She just let you go? Okay, fine. And then the third act gets really confusing. And keep in mind, I've seen Inception so many times and I get it. But this movie just loses me by the third act, and I'm like losing it. The editing too is off. Not just that one scene I told you about, but there are some scenes like in an attic that just kind of like it's so hastily put together that it's just kind of like it's hard to tell what's even happening half the time. And again, that third act just really fell apart. It's like, but I will say the sound design in this movie was pretty fascinating. Like I heard some of the speakers, and it's like, okay, the sound's coming over here, and the sound's coming from over there now. So that was really fascinating. It has great build-up, has great atmosphere, and a solid performance from Danielle Deadwyler. But I just felt like the story itself was just jumbled. It was just confused at times. And this may sound annoying, but I'm getting really tired of horror movies about grief. Like, this movie is clearly about grief. And I definitely feel like, okay, maybe not getting tired of it, but it's like you could take it in an interesting direction. And I feel like this was not an interesting direction at all. It just felt like same old, same old. I feel like this could have been like an A24 movie, and then Universal, which is a slightly bigger studio, got their hands on it, where they were like, okay, let's do this instead. That's what I feel like with this movie. On the plus side, it's only 87 minutes, including credits, so there's that. I'll give Woman in the Yard 2 out of 4 stars. Stream it. Next up is Death of a Unicorn, which was a movie that stars Jenna Ortega, Paul Rudd, Tay Leone, Will Poulter, and Richard E. Grant. It's about a father and daughter who travel to his father's boss's house for the weekend to kind of like get to know each other, kind of get a job promotion and such. But they wind up hitting a unicorn, and the unicorn winds up curing a lot of things, so they want to take advantage of it. And so basically the unicorns are kind of saying, hey, screw you guys, we're going to kill you now. This is a movie that I heard about for a bit. I remember it was one of the movies that was being filmed during the strikes, and it was okay to film during the strikes and such. And mainly because it was A24 and such. A24, no matter what, I'm going to be fascinated by, because like they're always doing something that's like unique and different and just so out there that's just like definitely different than a lot of mainstream stuff we're getting right now. And this movie looked like it was going to be a little bit more mainstream than normal, not just because of the cast, but it's definitely more, I would say, commercially out there. But like this movie itself, there are definitely moments of this movie I really liked. First off, I did think the actors do a good job, particularly the three villains, Richard E. Grant, Will Poulter, and Tay Leone. Richard E. Grant looks like he's having fun. Will Poulter especially is having a good time with this movie. He steals the show every scene he's in. Even Tay Leone, who I'm not really a big fan of as an actress, she was really good in this movie too. As far as Jenna Ortega and Paul Rudd, their relationship is generic. I didn't really care for the relationship too much. And also, I kind of am getting a little tired of the whole, rich or bad in movies and such, because, like, I get it at this point. Don't get me wrong, I love a lot of movies where they say the rich are bad and such. But this movie, I feel like it was just lazy. And I felt like it didn't really do much with the idea. Also, I felt like the second half of the movie is definitely a lot better than the first half, because like that's when it's really the horror comedy, and that's when it's like really fun. There are some really fun kills in this movie, and that's when it gets a lot more intense and fun. But this movie, also in the last 5 minutes, there are so many character actions where I'm like, why would you do that exactly? I don't understand why you would do that. Why would Paul Rudd do this thing? Why would Anthony Carrigan do this thing? Why would Jenna Ortega do this thing? And it doesn't really make a lot of sense. Anthony Carrigan, too, also does a pretty good job. I forgot to mention him. A lot of the people, everyone except for Paul Rudd and Jenna Ortega are great, but like Paul Rudd and Jenna Ortega are fine. They're not like bad in this movie. It's a movie that's kind of a mixed bag, but it can be fun, especially in the second half. I will give Death of a Unicorn 2.5 out of 4 stars. Stream it. And the last movie I'm going to talk about is A Working Man, starring Jason Statham as a man who Basically, he learns that his boss's daughter has been kidnapped and possibly put into human trafficking and such. And so he decides to go after the people who are doing this horrible thing to her. So this was a movie that I was not looking forward to because it stars Jason Statham and is directed by David Ayer. And the last movie they did was The Beekeeper, which I was not a big fan of. I felt like that movie it took itself way too seriously. It definitely felt like it was a movie that didn't understand that it should have been at least a little bit funny, or at least taken the premise and make it like, or like, crack jokes at its own expense. And it looked like this movie was kind of doing the same thing a little bit. And this movie, I will say, is slightly better than Beekeeper. At least the movie is at least aware of the that it can make its characters at least a little bit more interesting. Jason Statham's character is a little bit more interesting than his character in Beekeeper. David Harbour is also kind of interesting in this movie too, but then again, they don't use his character more. It's like, okay, so there's a scene where it's like, okay, so he's blind and he shoots an arrow to try to get Jason Statham and such, or play a prank on him and such. It's like, oh, I can't wait to see what you do in this movie. And he doesn't do anything. He's not really in any of the action sequences. He's just another character. Why? I will say I forgot the actress's name who played the main victim in this movie, but I thought she was really good, particularly in the second half. The villains themselves are a little over the top. They're crazy and such, and I think it's like, okay, you kind of took my criticism of the fact that, everything was played so straight in Beekeeper. And I feel like this movie has the opposite problem, where it's like maybe there are times where it's a little too cartoonish. And there are some lines said by the villains who, they say awful things, but it's like, I'm like, really, you're just pandering to certain crowds now just by saying that. And I'm like, you're pandering to the Sound of Freedom crowd right now. It's just it's a little bit better than, again, it's better than Beekeeper because the jokes are at least funnier. The characters are a little bit more interesting. The action sequences are pretty good for the most part. There's one towards the beginning at the construction site, which is like, oh, okay, this is pretty fun. I can't wait to see where the rest of this movie goes. And most of the action sequences are just okay afterwards until you get to the third act when it's just, just a big shootout and such. Again, I had more fun with this movie than Beekeeper, but I feel like there's definitely I feel like they tried to take things a little too far at times, particularly with the villains and such. Like they're a little too cartoonish for my taste. And again, I feel like it's not consistent enough with a lot of the action. I'll give Working Man 2.5 out of 4 stars. Stream it. So those were a lot of the movies that I saw within the last month. I kind of want to give brief thoughts on. Definitely will try to do a lot more movies on their own, starting with Minecraft next week. I will try to do as many reviews as I possibly can. And if I miss something, you try to request it if you can. I'll see if I can try to get around to it. I'm trying to get back into like the habit of like, okay, so this was the big movie of the week. Let's talk about it this week. So what did you think about any of these movies? Comment down below. Subscribe to the channel. This is Pat. Stay safe.